Patch 6 is bringing new challenges to Honor Mode, such as making the Shambling Mound now a fully fledged Honor Mode boss with brand new legendary actions and tuned up abilities. Karnas the Drider and Ragzlin both have new legendary actions, and they even increase the difficulty of the Ketheric encounters and so much more. These 4 builds are the best builds I've put together and will serve you well in Honor Mode. Enjoy. The Eldritch Blast Sorlock is one of the strongest builds in Baldur's Gate 3 for the extremely high damage output thanks to multiple sources of damage from a single Eldritch Blast cast and very powerful items to complement it. This build has insane crowd control by pairing Frightened with Prone, forcing enemies to skip their turns repeatedly. The build also becomes strong very early on and is perfect for a Tav thanks to the super high charisma. To get started, choose Warlock at level 1. Make sure to select Eldritch Blast as one of your cantrips because it will be the action we use most often. For subclass, you'll want to choose the Fiend subclass because the temporary health after slaying an enemy can be helpful early on. For spells, you'll want Hex and Hellish Rebuke. Hex is a damage rider, adding necrotic damage to attack rolls. Since Eldritch Blast is an attack roll, each blast will deal additional necrotic damage when used on a hexed target. We'll want to use our bonus action to apply Hex before casting Eldritch Blast on a target for this bonus necrotic damage. Hellish Rebuke can be used as a reaction when attacking to deal fire damage. This can be especially helpful to finish off wounded enemies during their turn. At level 2, you'll want to select your Eldritch Invocations. Agonizing Blast is the best for an Eldritch Blast build because it adds your Charisma modifier to the damage it deals, and Charisma is where we put the majority of our ability points. You'll also want to select Repelling Blast. This causes your Eldritch Blast to push your targets back up to 4.5 meters away from you. This is incredibly powerful to both keep enemies away from melee range where you would get disadvantage from threatened, but also gives you the option to instantly kill enemies by pushing them into chasms. At level 3, you'll want to choose Scorching Ray as your next spell to learn. This spell hurls 3 rays of fire, each dealing 2 to 12 fire damage. This spell is most powerful when used on a hexed target since each ray of fire will gain additional necrotic damage, making this your best single target burst damage spell at this level, which is absolutely amazing. For your Pact boon, you'll want to select Pact of the Chain. This gives you access to Find Familiar Imp. The Imp has invisibility, which can be used an unlimited number of times, which can be used outside of combat to initiate and surprise enemies, making them skip their turn, allowing you to sometimes end encounters before your enemies even have a chance to take a turn. At this level, you can also replace the spell you learned at level 1 with Cloud of Daggers. Cloud of Daggers deals 4d4 slashing damage in an area and is our best AoE option right now. At level 4, I'd recommend you get Misty Step as it will be helpful to get around. You also get access to your first feat, which we'll use on ability improvement to increase our charisma to 19. Getting Auntie Ethel's Hair to increase our charisma to 20 would be ideal for this build. At level 5, you'll get access to new powerful spells. Choose Fireball and replace Misty Step with Hunger of Hadar. Both Fireball and Hunger of Hadar are powerful spells, and Misty Step can be found on a lot of equipment, so it is no longer needed. At level 5, you'll also get another Eldritch Invocation. This time choose Devil's Sight. This makes darkness much more powerful, allowing you to see through it, but your enemies cannot. This will also give your enemies disadvantage when they try to attack you while you sit in the darkness, and simultaneously give you advantage when you attack them. Also, your Imp will now gain extra attack. At level 6, you'll want to go to Withers and change your class to Sorcerer. Sorcerers get proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which helps you keep concentration on spells you'll be using, like Darkness or Haste. For cantrips, I would choose Firebolt, Minor Illusion, Mage Hand, and Light. For spells, Shield and Enhanced Leap are perfect. For your subclass, you'll want to choose Draconic Bloodline. This gives you Draconic Resilience, increasing your base armor class to 13 when not wearing armor. Since Potent Robes is our best armor and it isn't armor, this fits perfectly. You'll also want to choose a Draconic Ancestry that matches which resistance you want. Fire is probably the most common damage type you'll run into, so any of the fire ancestries are a good choice, but gold is probably the best for the Disguise Self utility. At level 2 Sorcerer, make sure to choose Metamagic Twinned Spell and Extended Spell. This gives us the option to use Twinned Spell to cast haste on 2 enemies simultaneously. At level 3 Sorcerer, make sure to choose Metamagic Quickened Spell. This is the primary metamagic we'll be using to get an additional Eldritch Blast each turn. At level 4 Sorcerer, make sure to choose the Feat Ability Improvement and again put both points into Charisma. Our next level will go into Warlock, this time choosing the Great Old One subclass for Mortal Reminder. Mortal Reminder makes your critical hits cause Frightened in an area of effect, which makes them unable to move and receive disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. This is extremely powerful for keeping enemies controlled. At level 2 Warlock, this time our Eldritch Invocations will be Agonizing Blast and Devil's Sight. Our next 2 levels will both go into Sorcerer to obtain haste, fireball, counterspell, and elemental affinity resistance. To activate this resistance, all you have to do is cast a firebolt and it will last until long rest. Once we have 6 levels of sorcerer, the last 4 levels will all go into fighter. At level 1 fighter, choose defense fighting style, and at level 3, choose champion for improved critical hit. Since we chose the Great Old One warlock subclass, we'll want as much critical hit chance as possible. And our last level will be in fighter to unlock our final feat, Spell Sniper, reducing our roll needed for a crit by 1. Moving on to the best in slot gear for this build, starting with the helm. The best helm for this build is Birthright. It increases your charisma by 2 to a max of 22. Since our build is relying so heavily on charisma, this is an obvious choice, and you can obtain this in Sorceress Sundries. If Roland is dead, Lorokan's projection sells it. If both Roland and Lorokan are alive, Roland will sell it, and if Roland is alive but Lorokan is dead, it can be pickpocketed from Roland in Ramazith's tower. The best cloak for this build is the Cloak of the Weave. This cloak grants a +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls and allows you to absorb elemental damage once per short rest and deal an additional 1d6 of that element on your next attack. You can obtain this from Hellsick at the Devil's Fee in Act 3. The best armor for this build is the Potent Robe. It grants Gregarious Caster, causing your cantrips to deal additional damage equal to your charisma modifier, and it grants Well Liked and Well Fortified, which grants temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier at the beginning of the wearer's turn. To get this robe, you need to complete the quest Rescue the Tieflings in Act 2, and Alfira will give this to you. This involves breaking out the prisoners inside Moonrise Towers and making sure Alfira doesn't die in Act 1, or you won't be able to get these robes. When it comes to gloves, the second best gloves for this build are the Spell Might gloves. These gloves grant an additional 1d8 damage to a spell that requires an attack roll at the cost of a -5 penalty to that attack roll. The additional damage is incredible, and your attack rolls should almost never miss. You can obtain these gloves by completing the quest Find Dribbles the Clown from Lucretius, or a much easier way to get them is to just pickpocket them off Lucretius or loot them off Lucretius's corpse. The best gloves for this build, however, are Crater Flesh gloves. These gloves cause you to deal an additional 1d6 force damage whenever you score a critical hit, and this 1d6 force damage is a damage source, activating all of our damage riders again. However, it is currently bugged and is dealing much more than 1d6 force damage right now. Since we are stacking so much critical hit chance with this build, it fits perfectly. You can purchase these gloves from the Echo of Abazigal in the Murder Tribunal after you become an unholy assassin of Baal. The best boots for this build are Boots of Stormy Clamor. These boots inflict 2 turns of reverberation when the wearer inflicts a condition upon a hostile creature. When combined with Spine Shudder Amulet, which inflicts 2 turns of reverberation when the wearer deals damage with a ranged spell attack, you will very quickly reach 5 seconds of reverberation and knock your target prone. Now, in order for a creature to remove prone, they need to use movement, but because of Mortal Reminder causing Frightened, which makes creatures unable to move, your target is actually unable to do anything but remain prone and thus skip their turn. You can purchase the Boots of Stormy Clamor from Omelum in the Myconid Colony after completing the quest Help Omelum Investigate the Parasite. And of course, the best amulet for this build is the Spine Shudder Amulet, like we mentioned in the boots section. This amulet inflicts 2 turns of reverberation when the wearer deals damage with a ranged spell attack, and when combined with Boots of Stormy Clamor, which inflict 2 turns of reverberation when the wearer inflicts a condition upon a hostile creature, you will very quickly reach 5 stacks of reverberation and knock your target prone. And again, in order to remove prone, a target needs to use movement, but because of Mortal Reminder causing Frightened, which makes them unable to move, your target is unable to do anything but remain prone and skip their turn. This amulet can be looted from the Mimic in the bedroom on the upper floor of Moonrise Towers. When it comes to your rings, the first ring you're going to want to get is the Coruscation Ring. This ring inflicts 2 turns of Radiating Orb upon the target when the wearer deals spell damage while illuminated by a light source. Radiating Orb is powerful because it gives -1 to the target's attack rolls, and it also enables our next ring, Callous Glow Ring, to deal additional damage. The Coruscation Ring can be found very well hidden inside the cellar of Last Light Inn, inside of a heavy chest. And the second ring, Callous Glow Ring, causes the wearer to deal an additional 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated. Since we have the Coruscation Ring causing radiating orbs and illuminating the area, we'll always get these 2 additional points of radiant damage. Just make sure to cast light on your character so that you're always within a light source whenever you use spells to activate Coruscation Ring. And finally, the Callous Glow Ring can be found inside of an opulent chest inside the vault near Balthazar inside the Gauntlet of Shar. When it comes to your melee melee weapons, the first weapon you'll want to seek out is the Spell Sparkler. This quarterstaff grants 2 lightning charges to the wielder each time they deal damage with a spell or cantrip. Since Eldritch Blast deals damage multiple times as you level up, you'll generate lots and lots of lightning charges with this staff. You are rewarded the Spell Sparkler by saving Counselor Floric from the burning building in Joaquin's Rest. Make sure when you first encounter Joaquin's Rest, you immediately go and save her, because if you walk by without doing that, this weapon will be lost forever. You'll eventually replace this quarterstaff for Knife of the Undermountain King, which is one of the best weapons for this build. This knife reduces the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1, which is perfect for our crit focused build. The Knife of the Undermountain King can be purchased from Ajak Nir Jira in Kresh Yelik. For your second melee weapon, you'll want to get Rhapsody. This grants a +1 bonus to attack rolls, damage, and spell save DC for every foe you slay, up to +3. And this can be found on the corpse of Cazador Zar. And for your ranged weapon slot, there's nothing better than the Dead Shot, and it's the best for this build because it reduces the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1, again supporting this highly crit focused build. So your final build will be 6 Sorcerer, 2 Warlock, 4 Fighter. 6 Sorcerer gives us lots of spell slots to convert into sorcery points so that we can use Eldritch Blast as a bonus action each turn by using Meta Magic Quickened spell. With Haste, Bloodlust Elixir, and Meta Magic Quickening, we can get up to 4 casts of Eldritch Blast per turn, and there are ways to get even more per turn, but I prefer this build more than them for maxing out critical strike chance and charisma and the incredible amount of spell slots you can convert into sorcery points. The Divine Smite Sorcadin is one of the strongest builds in Baldur's Gate 3 because of the extremely high damage output thanks to guaranteed critical strikes from a number of spells and conditions and very powerful spells and auras to complement it. The build has great crowd control by casting control spells like Hold Person as a bonus action thanks to Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. The build is also incredibly strong very early on and is perfect for a Tav thanks to the high charisma and strength. To get started, choose Half-Orc Paladin at level 1. Half-Orc is by far the best race because the build is focused on guaranteeing critical hits with Smite. Half-Orcs get a passive feature called Savage Attacks, which causes your critical hits to roll 1 of the damage dice an additional time and add it as extra damage to the critical hit. What's crazy about this feature is that it also activates again on all other damage sources from that critical hit. That includes it being added to things like Smite and Falaraluv's Shriek, which means in this scenario you'd get 3 additional dice worth of damage added, 1 for each damage source. We'll always have Smite activating on critical hits as a reaction for this bonus damage. And don't worry about overkill, if an enemy would die without the need to smite, it won't cast. Also, if you don't like how half-orcs look, you can use Disguise Self and still keep these racial bonuses. This can even make logical sense to change to Githyanki if you want to use the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane, for example, and you'll get the bonuses from being a Githyanki from the sword, and at the same time keep bonuses from being a half-orc. Half-orcs also get a passive feature called Relentless Endurance, which causes them to regain 1 hit point instead of being downed when reaching 0 hit points. This can actually be very helpful if something unexpectedly terrible happens, like falling off a glitched elevator, and instead of losing your honor run, your half-orc ends up saving your honor run. At level 1, make sure to select Oath of Vengeance as your subclass. Oath of Vengeance paladins get 3 amazing spells from their oath that are always prepared: Vow of Enmity, Misty Step, and Hold Person. All 3 of these spells are great and we'll discuss them more when they're unlocked. For your background, I prefer Soldier for proficiency in athletics and intimidation. This helps a lot if this is your Tav and your dialogue character, allowing you to intimidate your way through conversation. For your ability points, take everything out of dexterity and add them to Constitution and Charisma. Paladins gain health points equal to 6 plus their Constitution modifier per level, so this will add up as you level. It also helps with maintaining concentration, which we'll want. Charisma is really important too for both dialogue and trader prices, but your Charisma modifier also increases the number of prepared spells you can have and makes Aura of Protection much more powerful, which grants your allies a bonus to saving throws equal to your Charisma modifier. At level 2, you'll unlock a fighting style. Choose Great Weapon Fighting. This allows you to re-roll when you roll a 1 or a 2 on a damage die for an attack with a 2-handed melee weapon. This is especially powerful for a paladin because, unlike in 5e, added damage dice from all damage sources get re-rolled, such as Falar Aluv's Shriek, Githborn Psionic Weapon, Helldusk Glove's Infernal Touch, Divine Smite, or even damage coming from a dipped weapon are also all re-rolled, so this is perfect for our build. For your prepared spells, choose Bless, Command, Searing Smite, Thunderous Smite, and Wrathful Smite. These smites can be used situationally against enemies with certain vulnerabilities. At level 3, you'll unlock Vow of Enmity. This class action gives you advantage on attack rolls against the enemy you use it on for 10 turns. However, it is much more powerful if you instead use it on yourself. This gives you advantage on all attack rolls you make on all your attacks for 10 turns instead, which is incredibly powerful, especially since at level 4, our first feat we are choosing is going to be Great Weapon Master, which will give us plus 10 damage to our two-handed weapon attacks at the cost of -5 to our attack rolls. The -5 to our attack rolls is made irrelevant from our Vow of Enmity granting advantage against all enemies and because of our crowd control spells like Hold Person, which give you a guaranteed critical hit. Great Weapon Master also gives us a bonus attack when we land a critical hit or kill a target with a melee weapon attack, which we can use as a bonus action that turn. Since we're critical strike focused, this is a perfect fit that we'll be utilizing frequently. At level 5, you'll get yet another power spike from extra attack. We can now make 2 attacks per action. With our Great Weapon Master feat, we will now be attacking 3 times per turn. You also unlock 2 of your Oath spells, Hold Person and Misty Step. These are always prepared and are both great spells. Hold Person can be used to guarantee critical strikes, and Misty Step can be used for getting to your enemy quickly. I like to prepare Aid, Branding Smite, and Lesser Restoration. You can upcast Aid for a powerful health buff for your whole party, which is great for keeping everyone alive, and Branding Smite is fantastic at stopping an enemy from going invisible like your gear. Lesser Restoration can also be very helpful if blinded or if a teammate is paralyzed, you can help them get their turn back. At level 6, you'll finally unlock Aura of Protection. This aura grants you and nearby allies a bonus to saving throws equal to your charisma modifier. This is a bonus to all saving throws, which is incredible to resist crowd control effects and other hostile spells and actions creatures will take against your party. For example, if you're hit by a fireball but you succeed the save, you'll only take half the damage. Or if hit by Thunder Wave, you won't be pushed back by the spell, which could potentially save your life if you would have been pushed into a chasm. At level 7, we're going to take our first level into Sorcerer, and the rest of our levels will also go into Sorcerer as well. For cantrips, you'll want Friends, Firebolt, and Light. Friends is similar to Guidance in that we'll be using it a lot during dialogue, but it gives you advantage on the roll, which is really helpful to make sure you succeed. Firebolt can be used to activate resistance to fire, which we'll get into when we talk about subclass, and Light is important to activate bonus damage from Callous Glow Ring for whoever in your party might be using it. For your spells, you'll want to choose Shield and Sleep. Shield can be used as a reaction to increase your armor class by 5 until your next turn. It's incredibly powerful since you're only prompted to use it when you would otherwise get hit. Sleep is powerful as well because attacks against sleeping targets are automatically critical hits. Sleep is also an enchantment spell, which means after you attack, you can cast it as a bonus action thanks to Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. For your subclass, you'll want to choose Draconic Bloodline and Draconic Ancestry Gold. This gives you a large number of benefits. You'll gain Draconic Resilience hit points, granting you +1 hit point for each sorcerer level, and you'll also get access to Disguise Self in case you don't like how half-orc looks, or you want to unlock bonuses from gear. You can do that now without needing the Mask of the Shapeshifter from the Digital Deluxe upgrade. And you'll also unlock 2 more amazing bonuses once we get to level 6 for choosing Draconic Bloodline. At level 8, choose False Life. This necromancy spell can be upcasted to grant 27 temporary hit points for free. By equipping the Staff of Cherished Necromancy and slaying anything, you'll get a condition called Life Essence, which you can activate to make your next necromancy spell not cost spell slots. This can be repeated an infinite number of times, essentially letting you reapply this at will for free. For your class passives, take Metamagic Extended Spell and Twinned Spell. Twinned Spell is very powerful for doubling the effects of your spells. This is great on something like Drake Throat Glaive to grant 2 of your party members the bonus to attack rolls and elemental damage, or to twin cast Haste on yourself and an ally, or even potentially using it to cast Hold Person on 2 enemies. At level 9, you'll gain access to Mirror Image. This spell is great for increasing your AC. Each image increases your AC by 3, and you create 3 when cast. That's 9 AC you'll gain, and the best part is that you can cast this as a bonus action after attacking thanks to Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. For your class passive, choose Metamagic Quickened Spell. Quickened Spell can be used to cast Hold Person as a bonus action. If you upcast Hold Person, you can have it target more than one enemy, which lets you get 2 guaranteed critical strikes, which will usually one-shot both of your targets that turn. At level 10, we're going to pick up some utility. Choose Mage Hand for your cantrip and Featherfall for your spell. For your feat, choose Ability Improvement and put both points into Charisma. We want to get our Charisma modifier as high as we can for our aura and for our Draconic Ancestry subclass bonus that we get at level 6 Sorcerer. Strength can be easily increased throughout the game from Elixir of Hill Giant Strength, or even better, Elixir of Cleric Cloud Giant strength. At level 11, we can finally learn Fireball. This spell will be our source of AoE damage, which will become really strong next level. Also, make sure to replace Featherfall with Haste. And finally, at level 12, we will unlock 2 powerful subclass features, Elemental Affinity Damage and Resistance. Elemental Affinity Damage lets you add your Charisma modifier to the damage of a spell you cast that is the type associated with your Draconic ancestry. Since we chose Fire, our Fireball will be getting our Charisma modifier added to its damage, which makes it monstrously powerful. We'll also be able to activate Elemental Affinity Resistance by casting Firebolt before combat at the cost of a sorcery point to gain resistance to fire damage. And for our final spell, choose Counterspell. This can be very useful to prevent a devastating spell from hitting your team. And next up is how to guarantee critical strikes. Since this build doesn't try to increase critical strike chance at all and instead chooses to guarantee critical strikes, it's important to know all your ways of getting a guaranteed critical strike. Attacking a sleeping target guarantees a critical strike when made in melee range. Sleep can come from other party members from the spell's sleep and can help a lot with the early game before you have access to Hold Person. Sleep can also come from Drow Poison, which can be coded on your weapon or thrown by an ally, or you can even cast an AoE sleep through Glyph of Warding, which is quite powerful. Attacking a paralyzed target will also guarantee a critical hit. Paralyzation can come from Crawler Mucus, which is a poison that you can coat your weapon with or throw. Hold Monster will also guarantee a critical hit because the target is considered paralyzed, and even ghouls you summon from Dance Macabre have a chance to cause paralysis, so it doesn't hurt to get that spell, especially since with Life Essence it doesn't cost a spell slot. There's also a wild shape form that can synergize with the Oath of Vengeance Paladin. The Wolf Wild Shape has an action called Exposing Bite, which causes the next attack against the target to be a critical hit, which refreshes on short rest. You can also get a guaranteed critical hit from Wild Magic Enchant Weapons, which causes all creatures within a radius around the Wild Magic Sorcerer to have their next attack be a critical strike. This is going to be so random though that it's not worth going after in my opinion. There's also a ring called Killer's Sweetheart, which gives you a guaranteed critical hit after you kill a creature, which can be used as a reaction once per long rest, and you can find this at the end of the self-same trial in the Gauntlet of Shar. And last, you'll want the Illithid power Luck of the Far Realms. It lets you turn a successful attack roll into a critical hit, and ideally, you're also going to want to get every single Illithid power possible in order to get some amazing Cull the Weak activations. Once your enemy has 27 HP, even 1 damage can make their mind collapse from Cull the Weak, and this can come from Psionic Backlash as they cast a spell, your Flesh Melter Cloak if they hit you, or Infernal Retribution dealing burning damage from Helldusk Armor when you succeed a saving throw, which is actually quite common considering we'll have +6 to all saving throws from Aura of Protection. However, you will want to prioritize getting Luck of the Far Realms first for the guaranteed critical strike before you go after other Illithid powers. And next up is the best in slot gear for this build. The best helm for this build is the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. This circlet grants Arcane Synergy when you inflict a condition, which causes your weapon attacks to deal additional damage equal to your spellcasting ability modifier. That's Charisma. Since we put so many points into Charisma, this is perfect for us, granting us a nearly perpetual +6 damage to all of our attacks, but it will vary depending on how much Charisma you have at the time, and you can find this circlet on Ardent Jezereth in the Inquisitor's Chamber in Kresh Yellik. The best cloak for this build is the Flesh Melter's Cloak. This cloak deals 1d4 acid damage whenever a creature deals melee damage to the wearer, and while this might not seem incredible, it serves 2 important roles. One, it allows you to easily clear large groups of weak monsters who will melee attack you and then destroy themselves, and then later on, once you've acquired all your Illithid powers, your cloak will instantly slay any creature that hits you in melee range with less than 26 HP thanks to Cull the Weak. Cloak of Protection is another fine pick since it grants +1 to saving throws and AC, but I prefer the utility of an aura that deals damage anytime we get hit in melee range, which can activate Cull the Weak. And you can find the Flesh Melter Cloak and a gilded chest in the House of Healing Morgue. And the best armor for this build is Helldusk Armor. This armor grants Infernal Retribution. When you succeed a saving throw, the caster receives burning for 3 turns, which deals 1d4 fire damage. This 1d4 fire damage can activate Cull the Weak, instantly slaying the enemy if they are below 26 HP when you have all your Illithid powers. The armor also grants resistance to fire damage, and you cannot be burned, and you take 3 less damage from all sources. And it also gives you the ability to fly, so that's pretty cool. It's an incredible armor and can be looted from Raphael in the House of Hope. Since that's pretty late into the game, the Adamantine Splint armor is another great armor that you can get before you get Helldusk. And the best gloves for this build are the Helldusk gloves. These gloves grant a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls rolls and spell save DC, which is perfect since we're going to be casting Hold Person frequently. It also grants Infernal Touch, granting 1d6 bonus fire damage to weapon attacks. This is an additional damage source, and as such, it will get re-rolled whenever we roll a 1 or a 2 thanks to great weapon fighting, and on a critical hit, we'll gain additional bonus damage thanks to savage attacks. The gloves also grant +1/+2 strength saving throws, and you can cast Rays of Fire, which gets your charisma modifier added to the damage thanks to elemental affinity from your draconic ancestry. You can get these gloves from Harlep in the House of Hope. Since that's also pretty late into the game, you could get gloves of dexterity first from Ajak Nir Jira in Kresh Yelik. And the best boots for this build are the Helldusk boots. These boots grant steadfast, making you unable to be forcibly moved by a foe's spells or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. You also gain infernal evasion when you fail a saving throw, if that would ever happen. You can use your reaction to succeed instead. And when you succeed a saving throw, the caster starts burning for fire damage, which can instantly kill them if they are low enough health. These boots also grant Hellcrawler, which lets you teleport to an area and deal 2d8 fire damage where you land, kind of like a Misty Step, but angrier and more fiery. The best amulet for this build is the Amulet of Greater Health. This sets the wearer's constitution score to 23 and grants advantage on constitution saving throws. The additional hit points are great, and more saving throws means more burning damage. If another party member is using this amulet, you can also go for the Fey Semblance amulet, which gives advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Combine this with your +6 bonus to all saving throws, and it will be very rare that you ever fail a saving throw. This Amulet of Greater Health can be stolen from a pedestal in the archive of the House of Hope, and the Amulet of Fey Semblance can be earned as a reward for completing the quest Avenge the Hag Survivors in Act 3. And the best ring for this build is the Killer's Sweetheart. This ring grants you a guaranteed critical strike as a reaction after you kill a creature. You can activate this once per long rest. This can be found after you complete the self-same trial in the Gauntlet of Shar. Once this activates, you can switch this ring out for Strange Conduit ring, or you could just leave it equipped. For your second ring, you'll want Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. This ring grants Illusion Quickening. After hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast Illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. This is amazing for our build because we can swing once, cast Hold Person as a bonus action, and then get a guaranteed critical strike without the help of any party members. You can also upcast Hold Person to target more than one target, but even better, you can cast it on 2 targets with Metamagic Twinned Spell at the small cost of 2 sorcery points. And the best melee weapon for this build is Balduran's Giant Slayer. On a hit with this weapon, it deals double the damage from your strength modifier and grants advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, or gargantuan creatures. You also gain a class action called Giant Form, which gives you 1d6 additional damage and 27 temporary hit points, along with advantage on strength checks and saving throws. The temporary hit points fade after 10 turns, so remember to reapply your free upcasted False Life using your Life Essence. Another weapon that is also incredibly strong with this build is the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane if you disguise yourself as a Githyanki. The blade grants you an additional 1d4 psychic damage, advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, and resistance to psychic damage along with Cannot Be Charmed. If you like being a Githyanki, this is a great option, otherwise the Balduran's Giant Slayer will deal the most damage from Giant Slayer. And for your ranged weapon slot, Gaunter Mail is the best. It grants a spell called Celestial Haste, which lasts for 5 turns and doesn't cause lethargic when it ends. This is great since we can also twin cast it on 2 allies, and if you ever accidentally cast another concentration spell after this, you won't be instantly stunned from lethargic. You can get Gaunter Mail from the Steel Watcher Titan in the Steel Watch Foundry. Before that, another great ranged weapon is the Darkfire Shortbow, which is almost as good. It grants resistance to fire and cold damage and lets you cast haste. You can purchase the Darkfire Shortbow from Dammon in Last Light Inn in Act 2. And that's the build. It's one of the most powerful I've ever played and has a ton of synergy across the board. The Light Cleric is one of the strongest builds in Baldur's Gate 3 because of the extremely high utility from Radiating Orb and a number of powerful AoE spells and conditions such as Spirit Guardians, Destroy Undead, Destructive Wave, and Warding Flare. The build truly shines in Act 2 against Undead, but it is a great addition to your party for the entire game thanks to Guidance, Fireball, Remove Curse, Bless, Aid, and so much more. To get started, choose Light Domain at level 1. Light Domain clerics receive Warding Flare at level 1. 1. This reaction shields you with Divine Light, causing disadvantage on your attacker, possibly causing their attack to miss. This is key for our build, which focuses on generating lots of radiating orbs, which further decrease our enemy's chance to hit. For your race, this build is perfect for any type of elf. Wood elf would be ideal for the increased move speed, but any elf is good because what we really want is Fey ancestry, so that we cannot be magically put to sleep. This will come in handy later when we use Glyph of Warding Sleep on top of ourselves when we are surrounded by enemies to put them all asleep without falling asleep to it ourselves. Shadowheart is a half elf, so she works perfectly for this build too. However, keep in mind that the Firebolt gained from High Elf or High Half Elf are from the Wizard spell list, and its attack rolls adds your intelligence modifier, which will be low. When it comes to Act 1, I highly recommend using Produce Flame instead of Firebolt, because Produce Flame uses your spellcasting ability modifier, which is Wisdom, instead of Intelligence for its attack roll, so it will hit much more often. Also, Produce Flame's tooltip is actually incorrect in-game on clerics, and it actually deals much more damage than it says at levels 5 and 10. However, when you are attacking undead, if you're going to be using a cantrip, Sacred Flame is the way to go. There's also a necklace called Necklace of Elemental Augmentation, which adds your spellcasting ability modifier to the damage of your cantrip when it deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, so make sure to grab that when you're in the Inquisitor's Chamber in Kresh Yelek to make your Produce Flame even stronger. Produce Flame can also be helpful in Act 2 to provide your party a source of light against the Shadow Curse before you gain protection against it. Also, make sure to get Guidance as your third cantrip, as this will be used very frequently in dialogue and when faced with ability checks. You can also use it preemptively when entering new areas to give yourself a bonus to nature, perception, and religion, or even history ability checks, for example, that can happen when you discover a new area. Now for your spells, you'll want to choose Guiding Bolt, Command, Bless, and Inflict Wounds. Guiding Bolt grants advantage on the next attack roll against the target creature and deals 2d6 radiant damage. This is your ranged single target damage spell for now, and Inflict Wounds is also great for single target but requires melee range and deals 3d10 necrotic damage. Now since Inflict Wounds is an attack roll and melee range, you can actually guarantee it's a critical hit by using it on targets that are sleeping or paralyzed from hold person. Early on, Bless is also great for improving your team's ability to land attacks, and Command is solid crowd control. You can also use Command to disarm enemies early on. At level 2, you'll gain your first Channel Divinity Charge. This can be used to turn undead, which causes undead creatures to flee in a large area of effect. This will get much stronger at level 5 once we gain Destroy Undead. We also gain Radiance of the Dawn, which uses a Channel Divinity Charge to deal 2d10 plus character level radiance damage in a large area of effect. Radiant damage is a huge part of this build, so this will be what we use on non-undead creatures for repeatable AoE radiant damage. Make sure to get Healing Word at level 2 because it uses a bonus action and we can save down teammates from a distance without even using an action. At level 3, you'll unlock Scorching Ray. This spell has excellent single target damage. When combined with Falara Louv's Shriek, you can gain 1d4 thunder damage on each ray, meaning 3 to 12 thunder damage added total. Since this spell deals fire damage 3 times, it is paired perfectly with the Hat of Fire Acuity, granting 2 turns of Arcane Acuity each time you deal fire damage. Each turn of Arcane Acuity grants you a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. Since you'll have 6 turns of Arcane Acuity, that is +6 to spell attack rolls and spell save DC, virtually guaranteeing your spells to succeed. Hold Person is a great follow-up to guarantee your Paladin or even your own Inflict Wounds will be a critical strike on that target. And you can find the Hat of Fire Acuity on the corpse of the Strange Ox in Act 2 or 3, but not in Act 1, so make sure not to slay the ox until later. Scorching Ray also synergizes very well with Coruscation Ring, which applies Radiating Orb on creatures that the wearer deals spell damage to. Scorching Ray deals multiple instances of damage, which means multiple Radiating Orbs can be created from a single cast. At level 4, choose Resistance for your cantrip, and for your spells you'll want Guiding Bolt, Inflict Wounds, Sanctuary, Bless, Healing Word, Cure Wounds, and Hold Person. For your feat, you'll want to get Warcaster. This amazing feat grants advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on a spell. We'll want this for when we get Spirit Guardians at level 5. Since we'll be in close range dealing damage, we'll likely be getting hit, and we won't want to lose concentration on Spirit Guardians. You'll also gain the ability to use Shocking Grasp as a reaction when enemies leave melee range, which they tend to do to escape Spirit Guardians. This Shocking Grasp benefits from your Wisdom modifier, so it's also much better than if you'd get the cantrip, and Shocking Grasp makes your target unable to take reactions, and it has advantage on creatures with metal armor. At level 5, you'll get a massive power spike. Light clerics automatically learn Fireball and Daylight. Fireball deals massive AoE damage and synergizes well with your Hat of Fire Acuity. Your cantrips will also gain an additional damage die. Produce Flame now deals 2d8 fire damage, even if the tooltip says otherwise, and Sacred Flame now deals 2d8 radiant damage. You also gain an incredibly powerful passive feature called Destroy Undead. Whenever you successfully turn an undead creature, it also takes 4d6 radiant damage. This is a huge amount of radiant damage. Our Turn Undead action uses a Channel Divinity charge to turn all undead in a large radius around us. This will now deal AoE radiant damage thanks to Destroy Undead. However, there is another source of turning undead that you'll want for this build. Gandrel's Inspiration is an uncommon heavy crossbow which grants sacred munitions. Infuse your crossbow bolts with holy energy. For the rest of your turn, your ranged attacks inflict turned against undead. This hidden weapon action is perfect for our cleric. Use sacred munitions right before shooting an arrow of many targets, which causes your ranged attack to ricochet to nearby targets, including targets that are invisible or protected by sanctuary, and every single undead hit by your arrow of many targets will become turned and take 4d6 radiant damage. This is absolutely amazing. And what's great about sacred munitions is that it has a 100% chance to turn undead because there is no saving throw to resist it. You'll find Gandrel's Inspiration on Gandrel right outside Auntie Ethel's gnarled tea house in Act 1. And as a side note, you don't need to be proficient with heavy crossbows in order to use sacred munitions. It's possible this is not intended, as you usually need to be proficient with a weapon in order to use its weapon actions. For spells, replace Bless with Spirit Guardians and choose Glyph of Warding as your 8th spell. Spirit Guardians will be the primary spell we concentrate on and is the main reason we chose Warcaster at level 4. Spirit Guardians deal 3d8 radiant or necrotic damage per turn to enemies within its radius. Since it's a pretty small radius, we'll be running from enemy to enemy to activate this damage to them. To complement this strategy, we'll want 2 pieces of equipment: the Holy Lance Helm and the Boots of Speed. Holy Lance Helm causes creatures who miss their attack rolls against the wearer to possibly take 1d4 radiant damage, and Boots of Speed grants a bonus action called Click Heals, doubling your movement speed and inflicts disadvantage on opportunity attacks against you. This allows you to run around hitting everyone with Spirit Guardians while also triggering missed opportunity attacks, which will deal even more radiant damage to them. The Luminous set fits in perfectly here as well. Luminous armor and gloves both cause Radiating Orb when the wearer deals radiant damage, and Radiating Orb reduces the affected entity's attack rolls by 1 per turn of Radiating Orb, and the max is 7 turns. Adamantine Shield is also great here for reeling. When a target misses you with a melee attack, they are sent reeling for 2 turns, and reeling gives -1 to attack rolls for each turn remaining. Shield Bash is also working again as of patch 6, letting you use it as a reaction when hit to force an enemy prone. The other spell, Glyph of Warding, is ideal for area of effect sleep. Attacks made in melee range against a sleeping target will be automatic critical hits, and crowd control in general is very powerful. If you are surrounded by enemies, you can cast this directly on yourself, and because you are an elf, we are immune to sleep thanks to Fey Ancestry. At level 6, we'll gain improved Warding Flare. We can now use our reaction to protect an ally, giving the attacker disadvantage on the attack roll aimed at our ally. We also gain a second Channel Divinity charge, allowing for more Radiance of the Dawn or Turn Undead. I like to pick up Remove Curse here as well. But at level 7, it's time to head to Withers for a class change. We'll be starting out this time around as a sorcerer for proficiency and constitution saving throws. Proficiency combined with Warcaster's advantage on concentrating saving throws means we should almost never lose concentration on Spirit Guardians or whatever spell we might be concentrating on. For your cantrips, choose Minor Illusion to gather enemies up before combat, Blade Ward for resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage before combat starts. You can use Light to ensure whoever is using Callous Glow Ring in your party that they have a light source, and Friends for advantage on charisma checks. Now for your spells, you'll want to choose Shield and False Life. Shield can be used as a reaction to increase your armor class by 5 until your next turn. It's incredibly powerful since you're only prompted to use it when you would otherwise get hit, and it fits perfectly for our build because we don't want to get hit, we want to get all those misses. False Life is a necromancy spell that can be upcasted to grant 27 temporary hit points without using any spell slots. By equipping the Staff of Cherished Necromancy and slaying anything, you'll get a condition called Life Essence, which you can activate to make your next necromancy spell not cost spell slots. This can be repeated an infinite number of times, essentially letting you reapply this at will for free. We'll also activate Life Essence anytime we use Inflict Wound, upcast it as high as we possibly can for maximum damage. For your subclass, choose Storm Sorcery. This gives us access to Tempestuous Magic, which allows us to use Fly after casting a spell. The Fly gained from Tempestuous Magic is unlike any other because it doesn't use up your movement speed. It instead costs a bonus action. This is essentially 30 feet of extra movement speed at the cost of a bonus action. This is perfect because we want to apply Spirit Guardians to all enemies, which may be spread out. Once you have one level in Sorcerer, we're going to put the rest of our levels back into Light Cleric, following the same build we had from levels 1 through 6. Next, we're going to be putting the remaining 5 levels into Light Cleric as well. So at level 8, you're going to unlock Banishment. This causes you to temporarily banish your target to another plane of existence. This control spell has some really nice utility. In Act 3, if a Steel Watcher is self-destructing, you can banish it and the explosion will be completely nullified. This can potentially save your party from a lot of damage, since the Steel Watcher will typically immobilize your party through its linear area of effect maim ability and then self-destruct right on top of you. The same idea can also be used against Answer right before his Gathering Power ability will go off, so instead of running for cover, you can just cast Banishment on Answer and some other plane of existence will have to worry about that. And remember, use your Hat of Fire Acuity with Scorching Ray to dramatically increase your spell save DC against tough bosses. At level 9, we'll be getting our 8th level of Cleric. Choose Ability Improvement to bring your Wisdom to 18 and Constitution to 16. I like Aid for upcasting party-wide increased hit points and Lesser Restoration to get rid of any diseases or blindness. At level 10, we get Destructive Wave and Flame Strike. Destructive Wave deals 5d6 thunder damage, and depending on the variant, it will also deal 5d6 radiant or necrotic damage as well in a very large area of effect. This spell can also knock all your targets prone, granting advantage on your attacks against them. We'll be using this against large groups of enemies. And at level 11, we'll gain Divine Intervention. I would save this just in case for Opulent Revival, which resurrects fallen companions and restores nearby allies as if they had long rested. If you're doing an honor run, this can definitely save your run. But if you're on the Nether Brain, it's time to stop saving it for later and just use it for something so you get some value out of it. Also at level 11, your cantrips will now deal 3d8 damage, and you also get to choose another cantrip. And then finally, at level 12, you gain access to a number of powerful 6th level spells. You'll want to choose Heal, Harm, and Planner Ally, as well as Hero's Feast. You can use Markoheshir and Staff of Spell Power to cast these level 6 spells for free. The Planner Ally is quite strong, so I recommend summoning the Deva when you can by using one of those 2 staves for the free cast. Alternatively, you can have a Hireling Cleric buff your party with Hero's Feast and save yourself a spell slot and prepare something else. Since Harm is a necromancy spell, we can cast it for free each turn with Life Essence. This deals 14d6 necrotic and reduces the target's maximum HP by the damage inflicted by the Harm spell. This is a very powerful single target spell, especially when we're casting it for free. And next, let's just talk briefly about some of the gear we'll want for this build. We talked about some of it previously, but there are some extra pieces. So for your helm, as we discussed, you'll want the Hat of Fire Acuity for improving your spell save DC against bosses, and Holy Lance Helm for dealing radiant damage when an enemy misses you in melee range. The Hat of Fire Acuity can be found on the Strange Ox when you slay it in Act 2 or 3, and the Holy Lance Helm can be found on the roof of the Rosymorn Monastery. For your cloak, you're going to want the Cloak of Displacement. This gives enemies disadvantage on their attack rolls against the wearer, which is huge. You can buy this from Entharl Danthelion in Danthelon's Dancing Axe in Worm's Crossing. Alternatively, Cloak of the Weave is another option, but if another party member is using that already, Cloak of Protection is also good. For your armor, Luminous Armor is great. The armor grants Radiating Shockwave when the wearer deals damage. They cause a Radiant Shockwave, which inflicts Radiating Orb in a 10-foot radius around the wearer. Radiating Orb gives the affected entity -1 to attack rolls per remaining turn. This armor is found in a locked and trapped opulent chest in the Selûnite outpost in the Underdark. The chest is hidden behind a hidden door, revealed by a perception check, or it can be accessed by jumping from the room with a waypoint in it. For your gloves, Luminous Gloves are perfect. These gloves grant Radiating Orb. When the wearer deals radiant damage, the target receives 1 turn of Radiating Orb, and Radiating Orb again gives the affected entity -1 to attack rolls per remaining turn. The Luminous Gloves are found inside the Potter's chest in the ruined battlefield, accessible by jumping. And for your boots, Boots of Speed are ideal. Boots of Speed grant a bonus action called Click Heels, doubling your movement speed, and it inflicts disadvantage on opportunity attacks against you. This allows allows you to run around hitting everyone with Spirit Guardians while also triggering missed opportunity attacks, which will deal even more radiant damage to them. These boots are worn by Thulla in the Myconid colony, and she gives them to you as thanks for curing her of the Dwergar poison in the quest Cure the Poison Gnome. If you saved the elixir of Sylvanas that Nettie gave you, that can be used to cure Thulla. Otherwise, the Dwergar antidote and antitoxin spells such as Lesser Restoration and Protection from Poison, as well as the Paladin ability Lay on Hands, will also all cure her in order to get these boots. Now, for your first amulet, I like the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. This amulet adds your spellcasting ability modifier to the damage of your cantrip when it deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. So make sure to grab that when you're in the Inquisitor's Chamber in Kresh Yelik to make your Produce Flame even stronger. You can find this amulet inside a display case there. However, the best amulet for this build is the Amulet of the Devout, which grants +2 to spell save DC, and you gain an additional Channel Divinity charge. And even though the tooltip says it is restored upon long rest, all of your charges, including this bonus one, will come back from a short rest. For your first ring, you're going to want the Coruscation Ring, which applies 2 turns of Radiating Orb on creatures that the wearer deals spell damage to. Scorching Ray synergizes very well with this because Scorching Ray deals damage multiple times, which means many turns of Radiating Orbs can be created from a single cast. And this ring can be found in a trapped heavy chest in the cellar of Last Light Inn. For your second ring, you'll want the Callous Glow Ring. The wearer of this ring deals an additional 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated. This is added to every instance of Scorching Ray, allowing you to get a ton of value out of it, and it is also applied to every bonus thunder damage from Falar Aluv's Shriek 2, but that is not the case in Honor mode. This ring is contained inside an opulent chest in the Vault Room near Balthazar inside the Gauntlet of Shar. And for your weapon, Falar Aluv is just the best because of the benefits for your entire party from Falar Aluv's Shriek, and because we made our Light Cleric to be in the front lines applying Spirit Guardians, having tons of mobility and constantly reducing enemies' chance to hit them, they are simply the best choice to wield Falar Aluv. And for your ranged weapon, you'll want Gandrel's Inspiration. This is an uncommon heavy crossbow which grants Sacred Munitions. Infuse your crossbow bolts with holy energy. For the rest of your turn, your ranged attacks inflict turned against undead. This hidden weapon action is perfect for our cleric. Use Sacred Munitions right before shooting an arrow of many targets, which causes your ranged attack to ricochet to nearby targets, including targets that are invisible or protected by Sanctuary, and every single undead hit by your arrow of many targets will become turned and take 4d6 radiant damage thanks to our Destroy Undead feat. This is absolutely amazing. And what's great about Sacred Munitions is that it has a 100% chance to turn undead because there is no saving throw to resist it. You'll find Gandrel's Inspiration on Gandrel right outside Auntie Ethel's Gnarled Tea House in Act 1. And as a side note, you don't need to be proficient with heavy crossbows in order to use Sacred Munitions. It is possible that this is not intended because you usually do need to be proficient with a weapon in order to use its weapon actions. And that's the build. Hopefully this is the best light cleric build you have ever seen. The Tavern Brawler Thrower is easily one of the strongest builds in the game thanks to Tavern Brawler, which adds twice your strength modifier to the damage and attack rolls when you throw. The extra damage being treated as a separate damage source leads to incredibly high damaging throws, especially when combined with the right equipment and a good throwing weapon. This build is also amazing because it's incredibly simple and very straightforward to put together. So if you're looking for an extremely powerful build that doesn't require multi-classing, this is it. To get started, start as a level 1 barbarian. As a barbarian, you have unarmored defense, which adds your constitution modifier to your armor class in addition to your dexterity modifier when not wearing armor. So make sure not to wear armor while playing as a barbarian. You'll also be unable to rage when you wear armor, so you'll know if you're accidentally wearing armor. At level 3, choose Berserker. This gives you access to Frenzy. Frenzy upgrades your rage, granting Enrage to throw, which is a bonus action. So you can now start combat with a throw and Frenzy, and then each turn after get 2 throws. At level 4, you'll get a massive power spike with your first feat. Choose Tavern Brawler and put 1 point into strength, bringing it to 18. Tavern Brawler adds your strength modifier twice to the damage and attack rolls to your throws and is a key feat of this build. At level 5, you unlock extra attack. You can now throw twice on your first turn, use Frenzy as your bonus action, and then throw 3 times each turn after that. Between levels 6 and 7, you're going to want to change your class to Fighter. This change depends on when you reach Act 2 and acquire the Lightning Jabber, which we'll talk more about in the equipment section. But once you get this spear, that's the cue to go to Withers and change your class to Fighter. So at level 1 Fighter, choose Dueling fighting style. This actually adds +2 damage when you throw once you get dual wielding, because once you throw your weapon, the game actually registers you as having just a single weapon in your hand, and you'll deal this additional +2 damage on every single throw, so it's totally worth it. At level 3, choose Eldritch Knight. This gives you Weapon Bond, which ritually binds your weapon to your main hand, causing it to automatically return to you. Since Lightning Jabber doesn't do that automatically, make sure to bind it after each long rest. For cantrips, choose Light. Light is important because once we get Callous Glow Ring, we'll need to always have a light on our thrown weapon to activate the bonus damage. For your other cantrip, if this is your dialogue character, choose Friends, otherwise Minor Illusion. Minor Illusion can be used to group up enemies for big AoE damage using Nirulna later. For spells, choose Shield and Thunderwave. Shield is extremely powerful to gain 5 AC as a reaction, and since we really won't be using our spell slots almost at all, you'll get to activate this a lot. Thunderwave can be used situationally to knock enemies into chasms or to get rid of disadvantage from threatened, but honestly you probably will never use it. For your expanded spell slot, choose Expeditious Retreat. This spell gives you dash immediately and as a bonus action on each of your turns until long rest. Make sure to use Expeditious Retreat after each long rest because you'll want to be able to use this bonus action dash immediately in combat as your bonus action each turn before throwing when wearing the Speedy Light feat to generate 3 lightning charges per turn. These lightning charges grant +1 to attack rolls and cause you to deal 1 additional lightning damage, and at 5 charges you'll deal an additional 1d8 lightning damage. At level 4 you can choose any spell and you'll get your first feat, and again choose Tavern Brawler and put that ability point into Strength. At level 5, replace the spell you chose at level 4 and choose Long Strider if your party doesn't have it yet. If it does, you can choose False Life, Feather Fall, Enhanced Leap, or Disguise Self depending on what your party needs. At level 6, replace Thunderwave with any of the spells mentioned in the level 5 section, and for your feat, choose Dual Wielder. You can now equip your stat stick, I prefer Knife of the Undermountain King, and you'll get +1 AC for doing so, in addition to the increased critical strike chance. Also, you'll now be getting that +2 damage to each throw thanks to the dueling fighting style. At level 7, you get to choose 2 more spells. Any of them are fine choices since we're very unlikely to be using them and will be replacing them later. At level 8, choose Misty Step. This is the final key spell of this build, which will help you get into position. Because the trajectory arc of throwing, positioning is more important than any other build, and Misty Step can help you get at the perfect angle to throw when you're in tricky areas. Replace one of the spells you chose at level 7, and if you haven't already, definitely get Disguise Self now. You'll need this for when you get Dwarven Thrower in Act 3 to activate that bonus damage. For your feat, choose Ability Improvement Strength. You should now have 20 or 22 Strength, depending on if you acquired the Potion of Everlasting Vigor from Araj Abludra in Act 2, which grants +2 Strength permanently. At level 9, change out the second spell you chose at level 7 for See Invisibility. This will be really helpful for Act 3. At level 10, you get a new cantrip, choose Friends or Minor Illusion, and a new spell, which you can choose anything. At level 11, you get improved extra attack, allowing you 3 throws per turn. With Action Surge, you'll get 6 throws in a turn. Choose another spell and switch out the spell you chose at level 10 for one of the spells you're missing from the list we went through at level 9. And at level 12, again, switch out one of the spells you chose at level 11 and switch to one of the spells you're missing from the list we went through at level 9. You'll also get your final feat. I would choose Alert. This gives you a +5 bonus to initiative, and you can't be surprised. With this feat, you'll be able to take out multiple enemies before they even get a turn because you're going first, which can really help turn the tide in a battle, and your final build will be 12 Fighter. Nice and simple. Next up is best in slot gear. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. So the best helm for this build is Saravok's Horned Helmet. The number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1 while you wear this helm, and it also makes you immune to fear and other emotion altering conditions. On top of that, it also grants dark vision up to 10 feet or 50 feet if you already have it. We mainly want this just for the critical strike chance, and you can loot this helm from Saravok Anchev in Act 3 within the Murder Tribunal. Since this is an Act 3 helmet, the Grimeskull helm is another great option from Act 1, granting Hunter's Mark as a bonus action, which is very powerful, and also it makes it so you cannot be critically hit, which is great. And you can loot that helm from Grime in the Adamantite Forge. And the best cloak for this build is the Deathstalker Mantle. This cloak grants invisibility for 2 turns after killing an enemy once per turn. This gives you advantage on your next attack roll coming out of invisibility. This is really the only cloak that adds offensive power to the build, and it's Dark Urge only. So if you're not playing Dark Urge, I would go with Cloak of Protection, which is a strong defensive option. You'll get the Deathstalker Mantle by long resting as the Dark Urge, and the Cloak of Protection can be purchased off Quartermaster Tali. The best armor for this build is the Helldusk Armor. Since there aren't any great offensive options, this is the strongest defensive option. You take 3 less damage from all sources, gain resistance to fire damage, and if you succeed a saving throw, the caster receives burning for 3 turns. This armor is dropped off Raphael in the House of Hope. The best gloves for this build are the Gloves of Uninhibited Kushigo. These gloves are perfect for a throwing build because they add 1d4 damage to throw attacks. You need to be careful when playing because in order to get these, you have to save Dareth Bone Cloak from the field of Bibberbang mushrooms in the Underdark. You can very easily miss these if he dies. And the best boots for this build are the Speedy Light Feet. When you dash wearing these boots, you gain 3 lightning charges. These lightning charges add +1 to attack rolls and cause you to deal an additional 1 damage. If you gain 5 charges, they are consumed the next time you deal damage, and you deal an additional 1d8 lightning damage. These boots are the main reason we get Expeditious Retreat to dash as a bonus action each turn to generate lightning charges. These are found inside a heavy chest in the cellar beneath the windmill in the Blighted Village in Act 1. And the best amulet for this build is the Amulet of Greater Health. This sets your Constitution score to 23 and gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws. The extra health is great, but also the advantage on Constitution saving throws is incredible to avoid losing concentration on Expeditious Retreat so that we're at no risk of losing our ability to generate lightning charges each turn. And you can get this from a pedestal in the House of Hope. The first ring you'll want to get is the Ring of Flinging. This ring is perfect for throwing because it grants plus 1d4 bonus to throw damage. This can be bought from Aaron in the Druid Grove, pretty much the first trader you see in the game. And the second ring you'll want is the Callous Glow Ring. This ring causes the wearer to deal an additional 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated. The Callous Glow Ring is inside an opulent chest inside the vault near Balthazar in the Gauntlet of Shar, and make sure that you cast light on your weapon before you throw it in order to get these 2 points of radiant damage. Nirulna already has light, so you don't need to cast it on that particular weapon. The first melee weapon you'll want to seek out is the Returning Pike, and the reason you want to get this as soon as possible is because it has Homing Weapon. This weapon will return to its owner when thrown, which allows it to be used over and over without running out of weapons to throw. And you can purchase this from Grat the Trader in the Goblin Camp. You can go there almost immediately if you have Disguise Self Drow, since goblins are filled with awe when they see Drow, and make sure to get the waypoint while you're there. The second weapon you'll want to seek out is the Lightning Jabber. The Lightning Jabber deals an additional 1d4 lightning damage when thrown at a target, which is considered yet another separate damage source, making this one of the best throwing weapons really in the entire game. And you can get this off the Kuatoa Chieftain right outside the Grand Mausoleum in Act 2. He's a level 7 surrounded by a lot of Kuatoa, so don't rush there too soon if you're too low level. And third, the Dwarven Thrower. The Dwarven Thrower has Homing Weapon returning when thrown and deals an additional 1d8 bludgeoning damage if a dwarf is the one throwing it. So use Disguise Self when you use this weapon unless you're already a dwarf. It deals up to 2d8 additional bludgeoning damage if the target is large, huge, or gargantuan, which makes this your best weapon against those enemy types. You can purchase this off Ferg Droger in Rivington in Act 3 as long as Shadowheart isn't an active party member. Fourth, and in most cases your best weapon for this build, is Nirulna. Nirulna deals 3d4 thunder damage and an explosion when thrown, and it has Glowing, which shines a light in a radius of 6 meters, which pairs perfectly with the Callous Glow Ring, and the thunder damage is considered a separate damage source. The AoE from Nirulna makes this weapon deal the most damage out of all of your options if there are enemies close to each other, but if you have a lot of melee party members, you're going to be better off using the Dwarven Thrower so that you don't inflict too much damage on your own party members. Also, really importantly, in combat, make sure not to throw Nirulna and then throw Dwarven Thrower immediately after. This will unequip your offhand weapon and you'll lose the bonus damage from dueling fighting style and the stats from the weapon, which would be in our case critical strike chance. So make sure to either choose one or the other and stick to it throughout combat. I know it's very tempting to use Dwarven Thrower for single target and then switch to Nirulna for AoE, but don't do that within combat. If you're going to switch, do it manually outside of combat combat, don't let one of the throwing weapons replace your offhand stat stick. And speaking of offhand stat stick, the best offhand weapon for this build is the Knife of the Undermountain King. This knife reduces the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1, which is very strong, and the Knife of the Undermountain King can be purchased from Ajak near Jira in Kresh Yelik. You could also use Bloodthirst, since this Knife of the Undermountain King is used in so many builds, and I would say the two are pretty interchangeable. For your ranged weapon slot, the Dead Shot is the best for this build because it reduces the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1, which is very strong. And those are the best in slot items. This build is great to run because of its simplicity and how incredibly strong it is. And another great reason to run a throwing build is because of the interaction with Soul Branding. Soul Branding is a bonus action only available to Minthara, which increases the target's movement speed by 1.5 meters, and its next attack deals an additional 2d4 plus 1 fire damage. This condition ends upon landing a successful attack, otherwise it lasts 3 turns. However, when used on a thrower, Soul Branding does not end after a throw, and the throw gets the bonus fire damage each time. So Soul Branding is really great for throwers, another reason to possibly choose the build, or another reason to make sure you recruit Minthara if you're going to go a throwing build. Now overall, this build is one of the most powerful in Baldur's Gate 3 and will certainly make Tactician or even Honor difficulty seem easy because of how incredibly strong it is.